Okay, ciao everyone, and welcome to the 2023 legal update. And Paula Marra is going to go into the 2024 as well a little bit. Yes, and I did say 2023. So managers, you'll be receiving 2 legal CEU credits today. This is towards your renewal for September 30th. I'm Peggy West. I'm your organizer. And the title of the class says it all, so I'm not going to comment on the topic because we have been short of time for this one. Paula's got a lot to cram in, but I do want to stress that please review, and as soon as possible, the newest laws effective July 1st, 2024, because as you know, there are many, many changes and additions for both the CAMs and the board members. So thank you all for joining today. We have a record crowd at about 700 or more, and today's the sponsors. I want to say thank you, and I appreciate you choosing this webinar. Some housekeeping is you don't have to enter your CAM number into the chat box or into the Q&A. When you registered, you already entered that information. And please send me an email or tell me if you are on your phone, okay? Managers, we don't have a way to get a name that goes with the phone number on the collection of the information. So if you're on your phone calling in and you need a credit, please email me directly. I want to say that we appreciate your patience while we post these credits. Katie is the record person to post credits in the whole year of presenters that I ever have. She's committing to getting them into you by Friday. I'm saying allow 2 to 3 weeks. So be patient with this many people on. She will need some time to get this done. So I want you to note that the firm is Rosenbaum PLLC for today's presenter, and they will be posting the credits. Okay, so this is a 2-hour class. Let's introduce the sponsors and let's get started. First, I'm going to introduce my wind beneath my wings, Ventium Software. Katie Bassford is on. She's a national account manager and also IT support. So Katie, tell us about yourself and what does Ventium do for associations?
Yeah, thank you so much, Peggy. As Peggy mentioned, I am the national account manager, so I work with clients all across the US, but we do have a particular focus in Florida. Neighbors essentially is a all-in-one software platform that increases communication and transparency within HOAs and condos. So you can do full HOA and condo management from our platform, and it will help you stay compliant with all of the new upcoming Florida website laws. So please reach out if you would like to see a demo or you have any questions. I would love to talk about the ways neighbors can benefit you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And they are awesome. Honorable mention is Beatrice, if you'll just wave. She's the marketing manager and she is the bulk of my IT support. Thank you, thank you, thank you both. I want to next introduce City Quiet Windows and Doors. I have Ben Friedman on. He's the president and today's moderator. Ben, tell us about yourself.
Thanks, Peggy. Good morning, afternoon, everybody. My name is Ben Friedman. I am your moderator for today. So, real quick, City Quiet Windows and Doors provides turnkey white glove installations for windows, doors, storefronts, and railing projects. I'll get into a little housekeeping after everybody introduces themselves, but look forward to a very informative class from Paula and Katie and their team.
Awesome. Okay, today we have RMS Building Envelope as a sponsor. We have Mercedes Ortiz Montesterio. She's the Director of Operations. Tell us about yourself, Mercedes.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Mercedes. I'm head of operations at RMS, Building Envelope Consultants. RMS, we protect the building's owner's best interest when it comes to roofing and waterproofing. We are not contractors. We don't perform any labor, but we are consultants, and we sit on your side of a table to guide you through the complex process of re-roofing or waterproofing your building exterior. From assessments to specification development, we can assist you with the bidding process, with the contractor selection, quality assurance, warranty maintenance. Our goal is to get you the most value of your roofing money. Do you know if your roof warranty is in good standing? We can offer you a free roof warranty audit to anyone participating on this webinar. So give us a chance to show you how our services can pay for themselves. I will leave an address in the chat for everyone if you want to contact us. Thank you.
Very good. Also, I want to say or make honorable mention of Ricardo Moncada. He's the chief inspector and principal, and excellent company. Just if you need roof information, contact them. Next, I want to introduce Jamie Gelfand. She is the Vice President and Regional Sales Officer in Southeast Florida for First Citizens Bank. Jamie, what?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I am the Regional Sales Officer. As Peggy said, I'm covering the Tri-County market. First Citizens Bank is a 125-year-old top 20 bank. In the Community Association Bank Division, we work in conjunction with property management companies and large-scale self-managed associations to provide loans. We provide easy, quick-term loan for projects under $3 million. Typically, that approval is provided in 3 days, closing in less than 30. Other than doc stamps, the only fee is a $500 bank processing fee. We also provide standard term loans up to 15 years with up to a 24-month interest-only period that would coincide with the project construction timeline. We also provide payment processing lockbox for up to 5 ways for an owner to make a payment. So if I can be of any help, I'll put my information in the chat box, and I hope you enjoyed today's class.
Thank you, Jamie. Very good, and good luck. Next, I want to introduce Erin Nickerson. She's the Director of Sales at URI. Erin, tell us about yourself and what are you doing over there for associations?
Thank you, Peggy. Much appreciated. My name is Erin Nickerson with Unlimited Restoration, and we are a licensed general contractor that specializes in emergency services. So if your property experiences water damage, leaky windows, before you call Ben, call us so we can help you assess where the water is coming from and prevent mold growth on your properties. Friendly reminder that we are full swing in hurricane season, and if you do not have an emergency response program with a company like myself, you need to get on that right away. We have a no-cost program that is your contingency plan if we get hit by a storm. And if you'd like more information on that, I will leave my information in the chat. Thank you so much, Peggy.
You're welcome. Thank you. All right, next I want to introduce Brian Rammel. He's Marketing and Business Development for United Professional Engineering.
Thank you, Peggy. Appreciate the opportunity to be here today. Like she said, I'm representing United Professional Engineering. I just send a message. Everybody can reach out to me directly via email. We are a structural engineering firm. We are located in Lake Worth Beach. The head engineer, his name is Carmelo Giglio, and he is a member of FSEA. He is about to become the next president of the organization. FSEA stands for Florida Structural Engineering Association. So he knows a little bit about the stuff that he speaks about. Background for about 20 plus years in concrete restoration and in construction. And we primarily are focused on helping out condominiums with these milestone and recertification inspections. And we are in the process of opening up an office down in the Keys. So anybody from Monroe up to Palm Beach, Jupiter area, we are a resource here on the East Coast of Florida. And if you have any questions, we're also here as well. I hope everybody enjoys the webinar, and thank you for allowing us to be a sponsor today, Peggy.
You're welcome. Thank you. All right. Next, I want to, I'm not going to mention Carmelo because you did, but tell him I said honorable mention. I want to introduce Michael Peters. He's the Senior Business Development Manager for Securitas. Michael, tell us about yourself and what do you guys do for associations?
Yes, thank you, Peggy. I appreciate it. We're excited to be a part of course, this webinar. It means a lot of necessary information for our client partners. But as Peggy mentioned, my name is Mike Peters. I'm Senior Business Manager for Securitas USA, specifically for the Florida market. We are a global entity, but we operate decentralized with 14 offices in Florida. And we are what we say, we are your partners to make your world a safer place. We provide end-to-end solutions for every aspect of protective services, whether you need a fire watch response or an event security coverage, or maybe it's a seasonal need from a guarding perspective, or maybe you have a larger security build out with your program. So anything from the on-site physical presence to support solutions with remote guarding services or mobile patrol dispatch, amenity checkups, or electronic security if you need to update your CCTV, your access control. So please feel free to reach out to us. I operate, like I said, I sit in the Central Florida market, but oversee our team throughout the state. And reach out to us if you have a desire to see how to elevate your security posture. There is a reason that we work and strive to that we've been voted, the Reader's Choice Award recipient in the Florida Community Association Journal for the last 4 years. So definitely looking to partner.
Very good. Very good. Okay, great. Next, I want to introduce Ashley Leonardo. She's the marketing manager for Munyon Painting. Ashley, tell us about yourself and Munyon.
Yeah, thanks, Peggy. For those of you who don't know us and aren't familiar, we are Florida's top choice painting contractor. We handle all apartment, condo, HOA, commercial, residential painting needs. You got it. We likely cover it. We've been in business for 73 years, since 1951. So we cover all of Florida, West Palm, Orlando, Clearwater, St. Pete, Sarasota, across the board, the whole state. And we have a client care center that allows you to access live updates on your property. We're also licensed GCs. So if you have any painting or general contracting needs, I'll put my info in the chat as well. And yeah, I look forward to Rosenbaum's presentation, and thank you to Peggy and our fellow sponsors.
Welcome. And please give Chris our best. And he is also in marketing for the state. Next, I want to introduce Mark Landez. He's with Hafer Company, and Mark is an audit specialist and a principal of the company. Mark, tell us about yourself and how far-reaching Hafer is, and what do you guys do for the associations?
Awesome. Thank you. Hafer's been around for 45 years. We produce audits, compilations, reviews, and tax returns for the Florida community. Huge community. As far as what type of work we're dealing with now, we're dealing with a lot of consultations and going over some people's audit work. Now's the time more than ever to make sure that you have the appropriate services with regards to your audits that are going on. A lot of firms have chosen to get out of condominium. That's our specialty. Co-op, HOA. That's kind of what we specialize in. And, right now is the time to speak to your auditors if you haven't already planned. And we're dealing with a lot of the SIRS regulations with regards to the disclosures. So if you haven't already spoken out to your accountants, please do. And we're happy to help with any questions that you guys may have during this very different process this time of year.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mark, and thanks for joining. And please let me say honorable mention to Nicole Johnson Pendergrass. She is a partner as well as the operations manager for Hafer, and both her and Mark are always available. I'm also going to introduce Diane Alert. She is the Senior Business Development Manager for Best Roofing. She couldn't be here today, but Best Roofing has got an awesome reputation. If you're looking for roofing, please give them a shot and call Diana. Now, lastly, I just want to introduce myself again. I am a sales consultant for Beach and Patio Outdoor Living. We are full service in pool deck furniture. We offer new, pre-owned. We do full service repairs, and we have an excellent service and delivery program going from Martin County south to Miami Beach. With that, I'd like to say I wanted to introduce Katie Phillips from Rosenbaum PLLC. She is the Community Association Education Director at Rosenbaum, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Katie.
Hi, so I'm actually on Paula's computer because we're in the same room, so I don't want to have any funky audio issues. So I am Katie Phillips. I'm the Education Director at Rosenbaum PLLC, and I am on as well as a panelist. So I will be helping to answer your questions in the Q&A along with Ben, who's our moderator. So he will be reading off some of the questions that you have, and then I will be doing my best to also answer some of those written in the Q&A. A couple of quick little housekeeping things. I know that this webinar is being recorded. Only the managers that are in attendance today will get the credit. So people that watch this after the fact on YouTube or wherever will not be able to get credit unless they actually registered and attended the class today. I will get your certificates done in the next day or so. If you do not see those by the end of the week, please let me know. Sometimes they do go to your junk mail or spam, as we do use a third party that integrates with the Zoom registration to get those certificates out to you. And as for the managers with your DBPR credits, please give it like 5 to 7 business days. It is taking the DBPR a little bit more time. I'm committed to getting them all actually, sent into the DBPR and recorded for credit this week, but sometimes it takes them a few more days to actually show up on your end. So please give me until next week to get those in there and have them shown. I know you need to renew. I just want to clarify also that this is the 2023-24 update. So we started giving this legal update in October of last year. This is going to satisfy any of the managers still needing that credit for this renewal period. I know everyone wants to hear about the new legislation, so Paula is going to touch on that. She's going to kind of run through all of the stuff that we should already probably know from the 2023-24 session. And then she is going to talk about some of the new laws, but this will not serve as your 2024-25 legal update, as that cannot be given for credit until after the renewal period is over on October 1st. So that's my little, 2 minutes of housekeeping issues. Again, about our firm, we are a full service law firm with offices in West Palm Beach and in Stewart. We do everything in-house, contract review, document amendments, everything that you need for general legal matters and collections and litigation. We do not have to farm anything out. Paula is one of our shareholders. She'll say a few things about herself here in just a moment when she slides over and takes back her spot. And I do all of the education, print, social media, client relations, and a little bit of everything. And I'm also a state certified election monitor. So I do a little bit of everything here. My number is in the chat. If you have any questions, my email and my number are there. And I will try my best to get you all a copy of all of our business partners that had helped today when I send you the presentation, and I will be sending the presentation. So with that, I won't hold us up any longer. I'm going to go ahead and share the screen, and Paula's going to come tell you all about herself, and then we're going to get started. So Paula, take it away. I slide into frame. The hot seat. Right. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Katie, thank you for the housekeeping notes with respect to what we're going to be presenting today. I appreciate that. As Katie mentioned, my name is Paula Marra. I've been with Rosenbaum since 2018. I'm a shareholder here at the firm. Prior to Rosenbaum in 2006, I relocated from Kansas City, Missouri. So I have my Missouri bar, my Kansas bar, went to the University of Missouri for law school and undergrad. Decided shortly thereafter to relocate to Florida, took the Florida bar. And my career started with a large law firm in Boca, primarily focusing on community association law, planned unit development, land use, country club law as well. Was there for about 13 years, practiced solo for about 2 years to be able to go to soccer games and run my children around. In 2018, however, I determined to look for a firm that I wanted to find a space in. And I wanted a firm that was of a size where when my clients contact me, they contact me. And we don't shift the work all the way around the firm with respect to whatever item or subject that the client needs. So that was Rosenbaum. I've been practicing around 23 years. My colleague, Steve Brayton, has practiced around 26 years.
and we work really well together. We also have another attorney in our community association group, Stephanie Galloway. She's about 3 years out. She's brilliant and amazing. She's getting started. Also, we have 2 of our litigators that when we deal with certain contract disputes or other matters in an effort to quell any litigation, we will work with Lily and Laura of our firm. And of course, our managing shareholder, Dan Rosenbaum, has been around for 43 something years. And it's interesting because some of the appellate cases that we practice with on a day-to-day basis for our association matters are actually argued from Dan. So that's kind of who we are as a firm. As Katie mentioned, we don't send any of our work out. Steve Brayton has a wonderful background in bankruptcy. All of our foreclosures and collections are handled here at our firm. And our collection and foreclosure paralegals have been with Dan for over 23 years each, I think 24 years or more each. So we really work those foreclosures and collections consistently. Super proud of that because it's going to be one of the areas, unfortunately, as we move forward in 2026, I believe, for at least for our condos, where you're going to be seeing an increase in that. So as Katie mentioned, let's get started. Katie, are you doing the chat box?
I'm doing the Q&A. So
okay.
we want them to use the Q&A for questions, and Ben and I will be helping
okay,
to
perfect.
moderate.
So I'm going to let you guys do your job, and I'm just going to go through the slides.
And then Ben or myself will pop in.
Okay.
And give you, yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, we may interrupt you here from time to
yes,
time.
hi, Ben.
Hot questions.
Perfect. Okay. So no question is a bad question. And I like them as we move through these because it really creates a more fluid process to learn about real life issues coming into even this legal update. So again, this is the 2023-2024. We are going to touch upon the new laws that are coming through effective July 1st of this last year. Legislative changes for our homeowners association. We had House bill. And let me just kind of point out this particular presentation, the PDF, will point to the House bill or the Senate bill, whatever was passed. So it's always helpful when you do have a question, you can go back to the House bill. But from this point forward, of course, we're looking at the statutory amendments in 720. That's the notice requirements. The requirements for board meetings now include the requirement to have an agenda. Again, this was last year's October 1st requirement. Whether you knew it or not, condominium associations were required, of course, to notice their board meetings with an agenda. So as of last year, we have the HOA Act now requiring the same thing, which makes sense, right? We're going to have identification of all agenda items, except for if you have an emergency meeting, which is very few and far between at this point. We are going to post with the notice of the meeting, the agenda. Maintenance of official records. This can become kind of confusing. This is going to be basically a current roster of the owners. And when I say kind of confusing, it's because as a matter of practice, what I find with my clients is a lot of times for condos, which is what the requirement was, now it's also a requirement for HOAs, is the current roster of owners. What does it need to have on it? Do I need to keep it? What can I exclude from it? And if there is information to exclude from it, how do I do that? So when you, as a manager, are doing your housekeeping, do you have a current roster? That's the first question for now HOA and condo. What is required by statute to be on that roster? And is there any information that you can exclude from that roster? The answer to that last question is yes, pursuant to statute, but you have to have owner consent to exclude it. So both 718 and 720, again, now the update is 720 requires a current roster of owners. You're going to have the mailing address, which is the default address they provided you, and the property address. And you're going to have that information. You can include additional information. So make sure that you look at the statute specifically or seek legal advice on how that roster needs to be compiled. The one thing I hate to see is when we do an official records request response and the owner rolls in and says, guess what? You don't have a roster. And it's because we've never really had to address it. Let's say it's a matter of practice every day. So yes, you are required to have a roster. Make sure you know what information is required and if there can be exclusions, how to exclude certain information. The addresses, fax numbers, as I mentioned, if we receive and have consented to receive electronic notices, the email address will be an official record of the association. So when someone does an official records request and then they send out the email blast thereafter, one of the things you might consider is an email policy, perhaps a rule indicating that communication via email, even though it is an official record, if it's not from the association's administration, then you have to have, as an owner, consent from that particular person to use their email address, something to that degree in the resolution that you might adopt. Those are kind of forward-thinking things dealing with issues prior to them becoming problems. Again, if a member revokes their consent, that email address would then be pulled out of the official records inspectable. But what we see in practice is the official records, if they have email consent, that email address is an official record. The next step would be determining whether or not there's some policy you can adopt that owners are not able to use that unless they have consent from the particular email recipient. This is a big one, and I kind of smile because this problem comes up from time to time. The problem comes up like this. In the past, if an association HOA collected a security deposit from a tenant for perhaps common area damage, etc., when the tenant exits the community, you're required to send that security deposit back. Prior to this statute, there was no affirmative action that the association had to take with respect to those security deposits. I have heard about associations that have a substantial fund of security deposits from years ago that they can't match up to who it belongs to. It is a problem you don't want to have, especially as a manager or a board member. So when we collect security deposits from this 2023-24 update going forward, we're going to make sure they are kept in a separate account. This is something that I think is going to sneak up on a lot of my clients, frankly. So those security deposits that are collected cannot be mixed with any of the association funds. Once the project or reason for which the deposit was collected, like a security deposit for damage to common areas, we are going to return that to the person within 30 days. So that is something as a manager you really need to pay attention to. There are some managers today that I guarantee you will look back in the association's records and discover, oh my gosh, we have $20,000 sitting here. We don't know who it belongs to. At that point in time, contact your legal counsel because you will need to be walked through. The association has funds. Those funds do not belong to the association. So you're going to have to do some due diligence, figure out who those funds go to. This is just kind of practice points, not necessarily an update. So if that's discovered, contact legal counsel, figure out what to do with those funds. But again, moving forward, don't get caught off guard. This is something that you're going to have to set up the correct way. They cannot be mixed with any other association's funds. They're going to have to be held. So you're going to contact Jamie Gelfand over at First Citizens Bank, your banker, for your association work. And you're going to say, how do we handle this? What account do we do this? And what can we do perhaps internally to keep track of those funds, addresses, the names, backup information for those people so that you can send that out to them. You can send it. And if it's not responded to, then you're able to send it to the state fund, which is where we want our association clients to be. Okay. So there's a proper accounting to be had with this.
So, so Paula, on the security deposits, our deposits, should they actually be depositing them and then returning the check after the project is complete, or should they just hold the check and not deposit it?
So it's a good question. The only point on collecting a deposit for those type of security funds, especially, you know, the examples vary. You have a mid-rise condo collecting it for virtue of damage to potentially common elements. You have an HOA that may collect it for different reasons as well. The answer is you're going to deposit those funds. You're not just going to hold the check because that you're just holding paper at that point in time. Paper's not going to do anything for you when you go to cash or tender that check to pay for damage. So yes, you are going to deposit it, but you are going to, it's very much like landlord-tenant law. You are going to keep those security deposits in a separate account. You cannot commingle them with other accounts for HOA. Interestingly enough, this was an amendment to 720. This was not an amendment to our condos. However, as a matter of practice, you'll want to kind of follow the lead on that, keeping those security deposits separate. The main thing, that's really the easy part, in my opinion, Katie. The hard part is making sure when that security deposit needs to be returned, For HOAs, you have a 30-day mark now. So that needs to be processed. You need to get that check back to that person who submitted it once the security deposit's no longer in use. Prohibition on kickbacks. Obviously, it's prohibited for an officer, director, or a manager to solicit, offer to accept anything of service of value. This is pursuant to Chapter 617. That's our Not-for-Profit Act. So keep in mind, as a condo HOA, you're governed by 718, 720. But every not-for-profit in Florida is governed by the Not-for-Profit Act, and that's Chapter 617. When something is not specific enough, that's a general way of saying it, for our condo or HOA Act, we're going to look to our Not-for-Profit Act sometimes for guidance. So this would be one of those areas. We're not going to take anything that we haven't paid for. This does sneak up on individuals, board members. I've seen it from time to time where the landscaper has an additional flat of annuals and says, I can put them in your front area. Of course, no problem, do that. But lo and behold, that other board member who does not like you very much finds out, and now you have accepted something of value without paying for it. So that is an immediate removal of that board member. And the statute uses the word shall. So the other board members really don't have discretion to be to do a fact finding and say, oh, she didn't really understand that that's the way it worked. Or yes, the board member's sliding doors were removed and she didn't pay for that, but she really didn't understand that that's how the statute operates. It is an immediate removal. So kickback does not have to be your traditional kickback the way we think about something that's nefarious. A kickback can also be something that you just don't see it coming, but yet it's something for value that you didn't pay for, okay? So you can go to Katie's functions and eat some food for less than $25. That's the exception. It's statutory. For, again, grounds for immediate removal, takeaway point, which everyone should know, is there are very few grounds for immediate removal of a board member. They would be, again, soliciting, taking anything for value that you haven't paid for would be immediate removal. Also, forgery of a ballot envelope, voting certificate used in an election, theft or embezzlement involving the association funds, destruction or refusal for an inspection or copying of the association's records, obstruction of justice connected with that particular destruction. So those last few slides, they really don't explain exactly what 720 was amended to provide. It did, in a sense, arguably weaponize the official records inspections. However, 720 was amended last year to provide that if you do refuse the copying of inspection of a record, you destroy a record, it's in the period of your furtherance of other crimes. So keep in mind that when an owner claims you are in violation of 720 and you've committed some type of crime, that would be associated with that board member being investigated by law enforcement jurisdiction or the division. And in fact, you've destroyed those records in furtherance of your crime. I don't know if that was quite explained well enough in the statutory amendment, because my concern and fear is that any owner who believes that you're not giving them a record, which may never have existed or which wasn't transferred properly from prior management, is going to claim that now this HOA board member has committed some heinous crime and that they should be able to employ the 720-3033 against that person. So keep in mind, the operation of this overall is destruction or refusal to copy in the furtherance of that other crime. And as we all know from the news, this is related to the Miami case, right? The big Miami case where there was embezzlement, theft of funds, et cetera. Bolstering the ability of law enforcement to throw in other crimes related to the bigger crime of theft and embezzlement. With respect to developer-appointed board members, we're going to move through these pretty quickly. As we all know, when your association is developed and then there's a turnover, 720 was amended to clarify certain roles and relationships between a developer and a developer-appointed board members, and disclosures with respect to conflicts of interest. That's what this has to deal with. Just know that it's out there. Also, directors and officers appointed by the developer, we're going to disclose any activity within 14 days before voting on an issue. This will become relevant for basically turnover issues. Whenever you go through a turnover for a new community, you're going to be working with legal counsel. They may be able to employ this new statute to claim that certain contracts for goods or services should be voided. So that may be helpful. Reasonable fines for violations. After the board adopts a fine, it's going to be 14 days before the hearing committee. This actually was a 2023-2024 update. We're going to move through this because this was amended again this last year with respect to fining and the ability of an HOA to fine. They've actually made it more difficult and cumbersome with respect to actually levying a fine against an owner, giving a cure period. This is 2025, giving a cure period to the owner up to the date that the committee meets. So really kind of took some teeth out of our fining ability for HOAs. This again is 2024. This was updated notice last year provided to the owner who was going to be subject to a fine, but these have changed dramatically. So when you receive this PDF, just note that this has changed dramatically with respect to the 2025 changes. Fraudulent voting activities. I wish they would have created this in 718 as opposed to 720, because I typically see my 718 associations face more difficulties with respect to ballot harvesting or door knocking on, frankly, elderly individuals' doors, soliciting votes, etc. But this was 720, provisions relating to fraudulent voting activities in associations, elections, and penalties. That was October 1st that these would take place. And that means that willfully or falsely swearing to procure another person's vote, perpetrating, attempting to perpetrate, to fraudulently cause someone to cast a vote, or changing or attempting to changing a member's ballot, a ballot envelope, or voting certificate. This is, again, all HOA. This is not codified in 718 at this point in time. Number 4 is my favorite: menacing, threatening, or using bribery or any form of corruption to deceive or influence a vote. It's one of my favorites because, again, I see it often, typically for our condominium associations, and I don't necessarily usually see it for our HOAs. Promising anything of value to buy your vote. I'm not quite sure what I'd sell my vote for, Katie. What do you think? I don't know. Something. But the takeaway point here, I think, for our HOAs is the same advice I give at our board certification courses. And that is, your HOA bylaws are probably pretty flawed with respect to being able to, in an organized manner with very clear directives, how to conduct your election. So since 2020, we've seen probably a 50% uptick in HOA election disputes. And even when we have examples of interpreting to the best of our ability as legal counsel what your bylaws provide for your election procedure in an HOA, lo and behold, we carry out that election. It's disputed. The arbitrator says it should be carried out like this. The next year, it's carried out like that. And then the new arbitrator says, no, that was the wrong way too. So takeaway point is this, and we do this pretty often. We amend our bylaws to create a pseudo-style condo election process where you have the secret ballot, you have the 60-day mailing, the 30-day mailing, the 14. You can tighten up the time frame so it's not a full 60, but it looks and walks and talks a lot like your statutory condo process, and that eliminates the election disputes with respect to the intricacies of what your bylaws are providing. For example, if your bylaws provide that you can vote by proxy, general proxy, and your bylaws just provide that your election should be on the night of the annual meeting, if somebody, and by ballot, that means you have a ballot at the annual meeting, and I can come in with 55 general proxies. I get 55 ballots and I vote my 55 choices. Okay, so there's a lot of different nuances in HOA. Again, statute last year was amended to provide that you cannot menace, threaten, etc. It does provide for penalties. Unfortunately, the statute doesn't provide any indication about how we actually process that or have a complaint. Is it in the law? You know, is it by suit? Is it by lawsuit? Or is it by civil procedure through the division? It's really not clear. The bottom line is this. Try to make it a goal to amend your bylaws so that we don't have any types of issues and the person can vote by secret ballot like a condo. Again, these acts are considered fraudulent and subject to a misdemeanor. I fear that if you called your local law enforcement agency and you told them that someone committed a misdemeanor, they would write a report and we would be left with just staring at the statute and wondering what to do next with no real teeth with respect to anyone who's engaging in those types of activities. Installation display of storage items. This was amended early last year. It's artificial turf, boats, flags, RVs. If they are not and cannot be viewed from an adjacent owner or from the front of the parcel, owners can store those items in the rear yard so long as they cannot be seen. This kind of cuts both ways, in my opinion, because if you have someone who is storing something in their rear yard and it can be seen, well, then this statute arguably works for the association's point to say, we can see it, the statute's on point, you need to remove it. Alternatively, if someone is storing something in their rear yard, the last place we want to be is arguing whether or not I can see the top of that boat or the top of the RV from my neighbor's yard, right? I can see 1 foot of it. Ultimately, anytime you want to enforce this or you are dealing with a substantive right that may have been amended by statute, you want to contact your legal counsel. Your declaration may or may not be amendable for substantive issues, depending on if you have Kaufman language. And that's where I'm going to leave that driblet of information. Always contact your attorney when you're going to enforce new substantive legislative changes. They may or may not apply to your declaration, depending on what language you have. In other words, does your declaration live with the statutory changes for substantive rights or not?
And this is for HOAs.
This is for HOAs. Yes, I don't think that anyone's going to be storing their RV in their condo unit, but maybe, I don't know.
You know.
I've seen worse. I saw that one guy, he cut the whole entire front of the condo unit off and put his Lincoln in there, remember?
Yes.
You can't make this stuff up. I should write it down. True story. This is makes my life easier because a lot of flags during certain times, again, the first responder flags, basically an expansion of what can be flown without restriction from your HOA, expanded to include certain flags for correctional officers, nurses, etc. Condo and co-op legislation from last year. Senate Bill 154, the milestone and SERS, they call it a glitch bill. I'd like to call it something else, but I won't. Basically, the glitch bill went into try to fix issues that were coming out of the May of 2022 bill to try to address certain holes, missing pieces, if you will, for the milestone and the structural integrity reserve study. It actually did do and help us a little bit with respect to timeframes, what's to be included, who, what areas, whether it's engineers or even the division will specify administrative rules with respect to different requirements. So it did actually assist to some degree. And we are continuing to kind of iron the milestone requirements out and the SERS requirements out. So if you are a condo with 3 stories or more, including the 3 livable stories. If you have 3 stories and your first story is a garage or unlivable space, you are considered a 2-story, but you will always want to make sure that you check with your local jurisdiction to make sure that they agree with that interpretation. We know that the mandatory structural integrity, it's going to involve a phase 1 and phase 2. The phase 1 will move forward. If that engineer or architect does not find any problems with the phase 1, you do not go to a phase 2. What I have been seeing in practice is they will give you a list. that says these are the minor phase 1 issues we saw. How fast can you get these fixed before I issue my final report? So that is what I've been seeing, which I think is completely consistent with the law. And then before the final report is finalized for the phase 1, those issues are fixed and there's no need to go to a phase 2. The phase 2 would be if there is seen substantial structural deterioration. That would be a phase 2. Each of these reports, by the way, once you receive the notice from your jurisdiction, which everyone listening today should have already received that over a year ago, that is required to be sent to the owners or posted on your website within, I believe it's 14 days. And then once you receive the final report, that's a 30-day notice requirement that you're sending that to the owners, okay? But keep in mind, one of the questions that I get often is, well, if it's not final, do I send it? Well, it's not a final report, so it's not signed or sealed by either the architect or the engineer. So it's not a final report. They're still working on it. You may have seen versions of it. The board may have worked with their professional to review an unfinalized report, but that's not the finalized report. You're required to send the final report. Initial deadlines, again, that was for the milestone inspection. Who's required to have it? Most of you all are. And that's when it's 30 years of age from the date of certificate of occupancy. So really most of our clients are. We have some new clients that are not at this point in time. But it's when it reaches 30 years of age, on or after July 1st, 2024, it'd be December 31st, 2024. If you have not stood in line yet to receive your milestone, or you're not working with a professional to get you your milestone, you are behind the ball and you will need to work quickly, at least to have in place a contract for that milestone to be performed. And then we will have to address when December 31st rolls around, what does that look like at that point in time if you don't have it completed or finalized. The local law enforcement agency, this was a change last year, which I thought was helpful. They do have a little bit more discretion with respect to the milestone and whether there's going to be any discretion to even accept the fact that you have a contract to perform it, but you haven't had it performed yet. Again, that's the granting of extension that I was just referencing. We do have some discretion there, but you do want to at least request that extension when you have a contract underway with your engineer or architect. Don't go to the town hall or the city hall and ask for an extension when you have done and performed no due diligence to move forward with your milestone.
Right. I'm told too that that's really only for when the engineering firms are backed up into the next year. So they have to have the actual contract signed, sealed, and ready to go.
Right.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Don't show up and say, yeah,
we just didn't do it.
We just haven't gotten there yet. We're really busy. You have to have that contract with an architect or engineer underway. And at that point in time, what I've been seeing is they'll let you know about what approximate time frame they will get to your building. And that's what your local jurisdiction needs to see. I don't have any experience with any of my clients that haven't done that yet, but I'm sure there's some out there.
There is an interesting question in the chat, which is that they have a 4-story condo, which is still under restoration from Hurricane Ian. And it's not habitable this year.
Right.
So who would they report to that they cannot complete those studies?
Right. So that's a really good question. And it really kind of fits into, that's why I love questions. So you have a condo that is not habitable at this time, still going under, I wouldn't even call it restoration, repair, right, for the Hurricane Ian. And it begs the question, why would you enter into a contract at this point for a milestone when there's nothing to perform a milestone on? Your building is still at the stage where it's under repair from a hurricane. My experience with that so far is that every jurisdiction that has those buildings is working with those buildings. It goes to follow that the only thing you really need to do is continue to document your communication with the building official with respect to, there's no milestone to be performed because there's no building at which you can perform a milestone at this point with respect to some of the damage I've seen that still exists. So continue to work with your local jurisdiction on the milestone completion dates. And my experience is that they obviously understand you can't perform a milestone on a building that's basically kind of still gutted. So but definitely get all of that in writing. You don't want to have a building inspection or official in charge of that particular area retire, somebody changes and now you're working with someone new. Those are the types of things you want to avoid. Get it in writing from the local jurisdiction that yes, your milestone is extended based upon the premise that you don't have a building even to perform a milestone on at this point in time. Because again, the milestone's in 2 phases. The first phase is there substantial damage? Well, obviously there is. Your building is still destroyed from a hurricane. Second phase is if there's substantial damage, what is your plan and timeframes to repair it?
Hey, Paula, I have a question also that Katie addressed, but I'm not sure if all of the attendees can see it. So maybe you can just touch on this on a broad, high level. What kind of penalties are going to take place if a building or an association chooses to not comply with the requirements of a milestone inspection or a structural reserve study?
So there's no specific penalties in statute, but that's a really good question because here's what I'm seeing. When we have the milestone inspections turned over to the city, if there's even in that report minor issues with respect to the condition of the property, the condominium building, it is more likely than not that those minor issues fit into a code violation. So unfortunately, my experience so far has been even the minor issues will move to code enforcement. And once they're moved over to code enforcement, you're now locked into a very tight time frame to cure it. So anytime you have that milestone, sit down with the engineer or your attorney, determine what smaller issues may not be a substantial deterioration, but are potentially a code enforcement violation. So Ben, directly to the question is, there's no penalties at this point in time coming through. However, there likely will be through the administrative codes. Some of those administrative codes, by the way, still haven't been drafted or adopted by the specific divisions, whether it's the engineering or the division of DBPR, et cetera. Those are where the penalties will start coming into play for the milestone failure to perform it timely. But what I'm seeing now, unfortunately a lot, which I kind of hate because I feel like it's like a double-edged sword. Here we are performing what we need to perform, but what we're bringing to the attention is we may have a code violation for this or that, either from a very minor code violation that would never be discovered in a sense. It's not life safety issue types of things, but the city does take those milestones or jurisdiction, every one of them I've worked with so far, they send it to code enforcement. Now we're kicked over code enforcement. Now you have to pay me to either go in front of a council of 9 people or one angry magistrate. So
and I know many of our clients in Palm Beach and Broward are already getting letters from the municipality saying you have to turn this into us by the end of the year.
Right. So correct. The letter requiring, so that everyone's clear, just kind of step by step, like peeling the onion back just a little bit. The milestone inspection reports that are required, your local jurisdiction has already sent you 99% positive the date and time that you needed to fulfill the milestone inspection. Last year, 2022, rather, 2 years ago, those were coming out that you need to do it in 180 days. And then lo and behold, the 2023 and 2024 legislative amendments came out saying you have till December 31st, 2024, pushing that 180 days out. Maybe, but with some local jurisdictions, they said, well, we're not changing that, which makes no sense legally, but whatever. So you have that wrinkle. But ultimately, by December 31st, 2024, you should have performed your milestone inspection. If you have not, you have a contract to perform it. If you are devastated still by the hurricane, you're working with your local jurisdiction, there can be no milestone inspection, right? So many different categories we can put particular condos in. As far as penalties, the penalties will come out. They're slow to get started for respect to, so that I have everyone understand. We have Florida statutes. We have several statutory chapters where the milestone and engineering, all of the details come into play. We have the Florida statutes up here. You go down a level and you have the Florida Administrative Code. That code, which we're all familiar with in community association law, is usually the code that the division enforces. It's chapter 64B, hyphen something something, either with election disputes or elections for condos or other different budgetary requirements, each of which the code sections have penalties associated with failure to abide by the code. So if anything takes away point, it's you have the Florida statutes and then you have the code. So the milestone inspection in the SIRS will divert from the statutory authority for a requirement, and then it'll level down to a code. And Ben, that's where the fines are going to come into play, but they haven't even, again, promulgated those fines into the code yet. So that's the first piece. The second piece is beware. Your milestone inspection is going to discover some ugly little thing on the corner of the side of a balcony, and that's going to be considered a violation of your local code, and you may be kicked over to code enforcement. You'll get a code enforcement letter with a compliance date. Don't be too late to involve legal counsel. Don't go to the hearing alone. And if it can be cured, you cure it as soon as possible, and you contact that same code enforcement officer. That's what I've been seeing with the milestones over and over.
I also just want to make a quick point that I think it goes without saying, even though there's no monetary penalty, let's say at this point, these board members that are on here should understand that they really do have a fiduciary responsibility to initiate at least these inspections and structural reserve studies, and not just think that, oh, there's no penalty yet, I'm just going to kind of wait until I get a letter. Really got to be proactive with this stuff. And these engineering companies and architectural firms that are out there, they have wait lists for this stuff. So, there is a fiduciary responsibility that these board members and property managers really have, to take initiative, even though there is no, slap on the wrist yet, let's say.
Right. So good point. With any of our statutory requirements, the board is going to be each individual and collectively carrying out their fiduciary obligation, including moving forward, retaining an engineer, retaining a reserve study for the SIRS if required, et cetera. So yes, at the bottom line, it's your obligation. It doesn't matter if there is or is not a defined penalty yet, because even if there isn't yet, if you failed to do it, they will retroactively, based upon a complaint or knowledge of it, fine the association. I probably would guess like the fines for the DBPR, the division, there is no more discretion for the individual and investigators. So if they find that a violation occurred, when I first started 20 something plus years ago, they would have the discretion to basically slap your wrist. Katie remembers this, right? You get a wrist slap, you move on. That doesn't apply at all anymore. If there is a violation, you will be fined based upon the number of units. So it's something that ultimately we want to avoid. It's easy to avoid. There's plenty of engineers and architects. There's just not plenty of time for all of them to get to your building. So you definitely take away point here. If you do not have a contract for your milestone or even your SIRS, you need to have a contract for that work to be, for that report, the reports to be done.
And let me just make a quick comment here, and then we can move forward. There are quite a few questions in the webinar chat that are not being answered because Katie's very busy answering in the Q&A. So if anybody has specific questions about certifications and milestone requirements, put them in the Q&A so that Katie can answer them, as opposed to them just getting overlooked, please.
Thank you, Ben. And there's a couple more questions that I left unanswered. Ben, if you want to ask her about the milestone, and then we can hit the other ones before we move on into the newer legislation that are still open.
Okay, so let's see. Let's talk about the milestone for a minute. Do both the milestone inspection summary and structural reserve study need to be mailed to all unit owners?
Yes. So the milestone inspection, once received, has to be mailed to the owners. I believe it's within 30 days. It was 45 and they shortened it to 30. The SIRS, I believe, also has to be posted on your website. I don't believe the SIRS has to be mailed, but it needs to be posted. And now with 2025, which we'll get into for the websites, of course, we all know those have expanded beyond just 150 condos. So, and also, as I mentioned previously, when you have, and you already have it, the letter from the local jurisdiction, that should have been posted on your website as well. indicating the date and time, but those probably are dated 2022, 2023. So if they're not posted, please post those as well.
I got one more for you, and then we can hit that next slide. Does the engineering firm, and I'll also add in here, or architectural firm, send the structural reserve study to the city, or is the board member or property manager supposed to present that information to the city?
So the milestone is supposed to be sent to the local jurisdiction. The SIRS is not required to be sent to the local jurisdiction. The SIRS is the accounting function, so that everyone understands the structural integrity reserve study is a reserve study that focuses primarily on the components that are listed in the statute as the safety components, the structural components, live fire safety systems, elevator systems, anything to deal with the safety of your building and the structure of your building. That is the SIRS components. They are no longer able to be waived starting 2026. With a caveat, the general rule is 2026. That SIRS report is the report the association will use to create its budget. The milestone is the inspection report that the local jurisdiction is required to have by the deadline. And that is what's required to be sent to the local jurisdiction. And as Ben and I were just discussing, that's also the report that kicks in sometimes to a code enforcement issue. So 2 different reports, they're going to stay in their own lanes. The milestone is required to be sent. That is, to the question, the architect or engineer sends that to the local jurisdiction. That is their obligation to send it.
I had just a couple more real quick. Ben, under the open section, I'm sorry, how old do the buildings need to be for the milestone inspections?
For the milestone inspections, if your building is 30 years from the date of the certificate of occupancy, then you're going to be required to submit the milestone. So if the building reaches 30 years,
that's for more than 3 miles from the coast.
Correct. Thank you, Katie. That is more than 3 miles from the coast. So if you are 3 miles of the coastline, which is not to become too specific, but that was one of the issues with the original legislation is 3 miles from the coastline means a lot of different things when you live in Tampa and you live on the bay and you just get just as much salt water as you do when you live from the coastline, which was originally designated as the coastal construction line, which goes up and around and draws a fancy little pencil mark around our peninsula. So it's 3 miles from the coast. The best thing that you can do if you're asking those questions is you should already be working with an architect or engineer that tells you exactly what milestone date line you need. So you should already be working with that. So we have those 2 dates, the deadlines with respect to 30 years of age after July 1st, 2022, December 31st, 2025. It's going to be the date of occupancy, but it does depend. You're going to be 3 miles from the coast. Because the changes from the coastline took place last year too, you'll want to make sure that, again, if you're on, I'm going to call it the coast of Tampa Bay, or you're down in Biscayne Bay in certain areas where it goes all the way in, are you on the coastline? So that changed last year from the original legislation.
Awesome. And then does that SIRS report or the structural milestone inspection need to be sent to the DBPR? So no. And so again, it's a milestone inspection. That's category 1. SIRS, completely different structural integrity reserve study. They do not need to be sent to the DBPR. Again, we talked about extensions. That was something that last year they changed and allowed local jurisdictions to grant extensions because they recognized after 2022 that there were not enough engineers and architects to perform all of this in the manner and the time for which they had originally drafted the legislation to provide. We just talked about local enforcement, local jurisdiction. Best practice is keep in touch with your local jurisdiction if you are a building that needs to have an extension. Where were we here? The association, this is something, again, kind of a practice point that snuck up on some of my clients. It's not something that we budgeted for at the outset. So we're either going to do a special assessment, we can amend the budget,
potentially, depending on what works for your condominium. But obviously the association is going to be responsible to cover the cost associated with your milestone inspection and associated with your structural integrity reserve study. There are exemptions when we talk about 3-story condominiums. There are certain caveats to that when we talk about 2-family or 3-family dwellings with 3 fewer habitable stories above ground. That interpretation, if you are confused about whether you fit into the milestone requirement or not, SERS requirement or not, you're going to consult either your local jurisdiction to say, are we in or out? Or you can consult your legal counsel to see if you fit into one of the exceptions. Again, notices to the owners. We talked about this. This is something that should have been sent some time ago because all of the local jurisdictions that I know of have already sent notices to the associations. So it's 14 days. You're going to let them know that the milestone inspection is required. It was a 180-day mark from 2022-23 forward. Those have been extended by a lot of local jurisdictions. If a phase 2 inspection is necessary, again, what is a phase 2 inspection? A phase 2 inspection is necessary when your phase 1 has shown that substantial damage may exist. And a phase 2 inspection is a more destructive inspection, destructive in a nature or a manner of which the engineer or architect will go deeper into your building to find out how much or to what extent structural damage exists. That is a phase 2. I've had very few associations have to move to a phase 2. Again, my experience is that when a phase 1 rolls forward, I've had a lot of associations look at the phase 1 in draft and move forward to fix any issues that may have exhibited towards a phase 2 with respect to that engineer or the submission of the phase 1. That is a decision. The phase 2 decision is the decision of your engineer or your architect performing the inspections, okay? Again, completing both phase 1 and phase 2, those will submit a sealed copy with the inspection report to the association. That is when it's final, and that is when you need to send it to the owners. That's the milestone inspection. It's going to be a sealed, signed copy of a final report. Then you're going to have that submission. It's going to also go from the architect or engineer to the local jurisdiction. This says 45 days. I believe, Katie, that was shortened to 30 days for the milestone. I could be wrong, maybe 45 days, but I think it's 30 days. It's going to be United States mail or personal delivery. If the, of course, owners have consented to electronic transmission, that's a huge money saver for things like this, and that's going to be sent via email. We're also going to post that on the website. The governmental ordinances, this is important. This has occurred a few times. They may provide for additional requirements related to your milestone. So during and after, just directly after the Surfside tragedy, before Tallahassee passed the act, the legislation, there were certain local jurisdictions that were trying to get ahead of the issues, and they passed local ordinances. So your milestone, your architect, your engineer should be aware of the local jurisdiction requirements. I see them from time to time. So make sure that you understand that there's a second level to this, or a side piece to this, if you will, and that's your local jurisdiction that may have additional requirements for your milestone. Repairs must be and begin no later than 365 days. If you're in this category where you're making phase 2 repairs, hopefully you've already started the process and you're already halfway there. Most of my clients are. If you are behind the gun here and you're just making the phase 2 repairs because of your phase 2 milestone, pardon me, it's likely that those repairs were already substantially in need and you're just failing to bring up to speed based upon the phase 2. Let me say that a different way. Your phase 2, you have got to start those repairs upon the receipt of the phase 2. You have 365 days. If you fail, then your building is going to be deemed unsafe. It's going to be a very bad news situation. However, prior to that even happening, like I mentioned before, once you even receive the phase 1, if you are in substantial disrepair receiving a phase 2, you are already locked into code enforcement at that point in time for an unsafe structure. There have been issues, you guys have seen them on the news, where you have the red tag, what we call a red tag, where they remove the occupants, owners from the building, and you're not able to access that building until those substantial repairs are made. From time to time, we'll see something like teetering towards that way, but if you're in that category, then obviously the condition of your building is pretty extreme, and it's going to be deemed unsafe for occupancy. The way that it works is you'll already be in code enforcement. You will already be highlighted at the local jurisdiction with even the building department to make sure those repairs are made. I do have a couple different examples in my own desk with respect to just two, but with respect to that issue. Again, short-term exemptions. With the milestone inspections been conducted within the past 5 years, that would be looking forward with respect to developer turnover potentially, where a milestone inspection is required upon turnover. When I talked about earlier, the Florida Administrative Code, we have the Florida Building Commission. It has its own code with respect to the implementation of the milestone inspection. What does that mean with respect to code requirements? Those are all going to be code requirements that are developed by individual commissions or individual agencies within the state of Florida. Alternative funding method. This is my favorite slide because I have no idea what that means and nobody else does either. Alternative funding method is referring to the structural integrity reserve study and the requirement to fund reserves for the structural components listed in the statute that can no longer be waived in 2026. The original legislation referred to alternative funding method to be approved by the Division of Florida Condominiums and Timeshares. And I smile because we still don't know what that means or what that is going to look like. It is specific to, keep in mind, that alternative funding method is only specific to 25 condominiums or more. So you're talking about your multi-condominium buildings, your Century Villages, your Kings Point here in Palm Beach County and Broward County. There has been, amongst our blogs, conversations about what does that actually mean? What does that look like? I think eventually in the next year or so, 2 years, we'll get to the bottom of what does that mean for those types of condos, and hopefully it offers some relief from the inability to waive those components, because a lot of those types of 25 or more condominium associations, generally speaking, are communities where individual owners are living on a fixed income, fixed Social Security income. And I believe this was put into the original statute to try to implement a method to where we could ease into the funding of reserves for those types of communities. So that's kind of the only thing I can take away from this at this point in time, but we'll continue to keep you posted because all of this continues to be fleshed out as time goes on and as legislation changes.
Hey, Paula, I have a great question here that Katie answered, but I think Katie, I think, can you answer this question out loud that you just took quite a bit of time to answer here? If the structural reserve study report recommends a large special assessment, what governing authority will enforce and or monitor that such an assessment is issued and collected? Katie, will you just read back your answer? Because I think it's extremely important.
So the FERS report is not going to address special assessments. It's going to tell you how much needs to be funded in a specific category and how many years are left to fund that. And it's going to give you that breakdown and allocation of how much money needs to be funded every year. For people who have severely deficient reserves, and maybe they find out their roof needs to be done now, like there's no more useful life on it, and they only have a third of the money that they need, obviously the report may recommend that you get that work done immediately, which would then trigger special assessment as one of your financing options. But you have multiple financing options. You can do special assessments, you can take a loan. If you have a line of credit, you can hit the line of credit. So I suggested that they speak to legal counsel or their CPA to look at their specific options. And if the board does choose to go the route of special assessment, definitely speak to your legal counsel to make sure that's done correctly, because if it's not done correctly, the state does have a problem with that.
Well, and I think the bottom line is this: the structural integrity reserve study from 2022 that's required changed nothing with respect to the obligation to maintain your building, to maintain your condominium. The structural integrity reserve study is intended to provide a baseline for the structural components of your condominium and fire safety systems. Again, it stems all from the Surfside tragedy, because at the heart of that tragedy was a failure to reserve, a failure to have funding. What I always like to tell my clients is, I said, we don't have any money for that. We don't have any money to fix our roof. Yes, you do. You have money so long as you have assessment authority, period. Your assessment authority is either going to come from a very healthy budget, even before SERS, where you encourage your owners to not kick the can down the road and you reserve adequately. So based upon the formula of funding for reserves, it is the useful life, cost of replacement or major repair is your funding formula for every component over $10,000 for your condominium. In the past, you could waive it 100% all day long for decades, which is what happened to Surfside and what has happened to so many of our other associations. So the takeaway point is SERS changes nothing with respect to assessment authority. What it does do in the future, thankfully, is we will have adequate reserve funding to do the work we need to do to keep our buildings safe. And therefore, we will not have to specially assess. As Katie mentioned, the board of directors always has special assessment authority. If you do not want to specially assess, which is very common, probably more common now than special assessment, is you work with your association lender, our sponsor of First Citizens, and you obtain a loan to have the work performed, and then the owners pay the loan over time for that roof replacement or concrete restoration. So special assessment authority always exists with respect to your association for the work that's necessary for the maintenance. The SERS has only provided the requirement to absolutely reserve for those components. The reserves will not be waived or be able to be waived by the owners at all in the 2026 budget. So long as, here's the thing, so long as you adopt, if you have a fiscal year that runs the calendar year, you must adopt your 2025 budget prior to December 31st, 2024. If you fail to do that, you will be adopting a budget that is fully funding reserves in 2025. And I always use the example of, even though you don't have to in 2025, you're either going to be hitting the kneecaps in 2026 with both knees, or you can maybe take a whack in the knee in 2025. Don't be the board that just ups it in 2026. Ease into it. You probably should have already been easing into not waiving those components completely in your 2024 budget. Don't try to keep them continually artificially low so that in 2026, your funding analysis will increase your reserves substantially, as opposed to easing into the funding of the reserves, allowing those individual owners who choose to sell and move to move on versus being in a position where they cannot afford that 2026 budget. That was a lot of information for that question, so I apologize for that. But the big picture is there's always a requirement for a board to fully fund every component that's in the reserves. The only difference between then and after the Surfside tragedy is you are no longer able to waive those components that are related to the structure or safety of the building. But that is your structural integrity reserve study. It is 3 stories or higher. Inspection of records. The thing that changed with respect to this is you can inspect and have a representative inspect. So it kind of broadened the ability to have someone go for you to the inspection. We just talked about this, Ben, as well, the budget, the reserve line items. We've kind of been dancing around it the whole time here. with respect to what is it, how does it work. One of the things I always suggest is a lot of times the division will have good study guides or even information on reserves, formulas, calculation, worksheets. It's kind of helpful if you're not familiar and you're a treasurer or you're a board member to visit those sites, because you can gain a lot of information and knowledge with respect to the formulas that are used. And then again, moving into 2026, we will not be able to waive certain reserve amounts. I also want to point out for our condo listeners, certainly that are familiar with this, in the past, again, it was a majority of the unit owners at a meeting at which a quorum was attained could reduce or waive in total the reserves. Last year, that did change. It is a majority of all unit owners. So don't roll into 2025 thinking you have waived those or reduced those reserves at a meeting at which a quorum is present and only a majority voted at that quorum meeting. It's a majority of all unit owners. So now you have a higher threshold just to waive your pool reserve, your pool pump reserve, your paving reserve. You have to get a majority of owners. If you're a larger association, it's going to take some work, or you're fully funding all of your reserves. So keep that in mind when you roll into the budget season.
And so there's one question, which we know we had this last year when we started teaching this, about fully funded versus fully funding. So they don't have to have all the money there. Yeah.
Right. That's a really good question. It comes up a lot. So the question is, in 2026, are you telling me I have to be fully funded for every component that needs to be replaced in total? So that if that 2026 year, if I had to replace the roof, do the concrete restoration and any other life safety system, the elevators, I have to have 100% funding as if I had to pay for it in 2026? No, no. The answer is you're going to follow the formula. SIRS, the reserve studies are compiled with specific instructions with respect to what that reserve funding will be for that calendar year. Your fully funding means that you're fully funded for that calendar year based upon the formula. So if you had 20 more years on your roof, then you have 20 more years to fully fund that roof. But that year mark next year is going to be fully funded at X amount of dollars. You can't waive that X amount of dollars anymore. That doesn't mean that you're going to pay for the roof that's not due for replacement now. It's due for replacement in 20 years. So the answer, I think that kind of clarifies it. It's a good question, because when we say fully funded, the immediate thought is, oh, that means I have to be fully funded to replace it next year. No, if you have a useful life of 10 more years, you're only fully funding for that particular calendar year, stretching it out to 10 years for that. Now, I don't want to get into this tangled web, but even the pooling of those components for reserves, the division is continuing to issue statements and opinions on that, whether you can pool those non-waivable reserve amounts. So for now, the answer is yes, but that is your attorney working with the accountants, et cetera, to answer those questions with respect to, can you pool those components? How do you move your pooled components now for reserves over to that non-waivable reserve? How do you bifurcate that? How do you separate it out if it's co-fungible with respect to a pooled account? All of those types of things, as a board, as a manager, you're going to rely upon your accountant and your attorneys to guide you through that moving forward through 2026. The reserve categories we've touched upon. The next few slides go into what's labeled as subsection G. It's roof, structure, load-bearing walls, fireproofing, plumbing, electrical systems, waterproofing. Let's remember, I think that the fireproofing and electrical system failed at Surfside, which would have given many more people, I think, what was it, 90 seconds or more?
No, like 7 minutes or something.
7 minutes.
It
was something substantial. It would have given them substantial more time to get out of that building before it collapsed and it failed, which is just heartbreaking overall. So all of the components obviously are directed towards the structural integrity and the safety systems for your building. Windows and exterior doors, clarified last year, If the windows and exterior doors are the obligation of the owners, then they are removed from your reserve requirements. In the original legislation, whether it's worth or not, this is why we were kind of banging our heads against the desk. The original legislation provided that your foundation was a reserve component that you had to reserve for. So that has actually been amended last year to provide that it was removed. Because how do you reserve for a foundation? Clearly, if your foundation needs to be replaced, you will not be, you won't have a building. So that was one of the things that they did just so you guys know, they passed that first legislation in the short legislative session of May, was a special session, and it was intended to fix insurance issues. So they passed this last minute legislation in May, encompassing basically what's affecting every single condo above 3 stories. This was part of it. They included the foundation. They took that out last year. Yes.
Quickly going back to the milestone inspection, do they have to send the entire report to the residents? And can they send them, if they have a website, just a link to the website to access it, or do they have to physically print and send the entire report to all the residents?
The report needs to be mailed to the residents unless they have signed the consent to receive notices electronically.
And that's the entire report.
It's the entire report. There's nothing that restricts a front to back printing, right? Anything to save money. I was going to suggest, I would not probably make it more concise, like a deposition where you can put it in quarters. No, but front to back
to save money.
Front to back to save money.
And you know what? A lot of people are doing, just go to like Sir Speedy or the Minuteman Press, go to one of your local printers, because they'll give you a much better price than having it done like in-house or the management company, because they have high-speed printers and they can do everything, including the envelope, for probably cheaper.
Yeah, that's a really good practice point. Katie's mentioning, if you guys can't hear from the computer, but that may be one of the items that you choose to use an outside vendor that can obviously produce that at a lesser amount per mailing, including, I think they'll do the envelopes as well. So that might be something that saves money, but it is required to be mailed. It's also, again, if you are a community that has not attempted or tried to receive consents for electronic notice, that's something that time and time again, it does save a lot of money throughout the years. I mean, you can add up for a large community, it becomes pretty substantial.
Someone's asking if it's a summary or the entire report.
It's the entire report. It's the entire report. We have line items with 25 years of greater, and the structural integrity reserve study is going to visually inspect the item as well. Honestly, any reserve study, the reserve study analyst will perform those inspections visually. Keep in mind, the reserve study analysts, they work from a standardized reserve study it's a national reserve study factors, just to explain it kind of generally. It's not something that you just hire someone and they come out and they try to do their best at determining, how much life you have on your pavement. Should it be sealed next year? What is your roof life? Those are analysts that do this every day. I will mention in the past, I'd say 15 years ago, at least, the reserve studies were required to be performed for condominiums every 3 to 5 years. So that was taken out, wasn't put back in. And so many associations went without a reserve study because it wasn't statutorily required. Again, going back into reserve study and then kind of trying to move through this a little bit quicker, just so we can touch upon the news changes. The study is going to, again, it's a formula. We talked about that. It's a formula based upon the useful life and the replacement at the end of that useful life, going through however many years to get to that particular stage will be your reserve requirements. Keep in mind, last year it was changed to provide for inflation. Prior to this, it was stale. You could not factor in, the reserve study could not factor in inflation. We talked about the exclusions. 3 stories or higher are required. Single family, 3 family are an exemption. Portions or components of the building not under condominium form of ownership are exempted. And then portions maintained by another party other than the association. Those are exemptions that probably don't apply to many people. Deadline, December 31st, 2024. It will not be extended. If you have a contract for your structural integrity reserve study, that is what you will want to have to defend the association's failure to have one, potentially. Again, visual inspections, a structural integrity reserve study, again, goes to the components. Many of my association clients, which I recommend, are including the other components of your building that are not included in the SIRS, just so you have your reserve study. I will tell you that most of the lenders that we work with ask for your reserve study before they lend you money. I do not say maybe one in the last year that kind of squeaked by and didn't require it. But with respect to your reserves, the funding of your reserves, your structural integrity reserve study, whether you're an individual person that's trying to get a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac mortgage, they're going to ask for that information. The lenders that are lending your association money are asking for that information. Your insurance carrier is asking for that information. So the quicker and sooner you start funding your reserves, the better looking you are in an underwriting context. And again, if you have not performed a reserve study or you're on your way to perform it, you want to obtain a loan for your roof, you're going to have a hard time competing with all the other associations that need loans if you do not have a reserve study done. I don't know if Jamie wants to jump in that at the end or something to point to that, but that is what we're seeing. It's very different than 2 or 3 years ago, 3 years ago. The underwriting has changed. So even if you are not required to have a SIRS because you are an exemption from that, but you need a loan, they're still going to ask you for a reserve study.
Hey, Paula, I have a question here. And it's kind of a selfish question, but I think it's important. As it relates to windows and doors. Windows and doors, I see that smile on your face, so you know where I'm going here.
Yeah.
Windows and doors are either owned by the association as common property, or it's the unit owner's responsibility to maintain and take care of that scenario. You have a milestone inspection. Engineer comes out and says, these windows are leaking. The waterproofing's bad behind the windows. We need to remove the windows in order to do this job properly. I guess the big question that I always get asked, if the unit owner is responsible, how does a board take their fiduciary responsibility in forcing, per se, the unit owner who's responsible to do these repairs, where then the unit owner says, well, I don't have the money to do these repairs, and you're the building telling me that I have this issue, you take care of it. And then it becomes one of these finger pointing things. How many times do you get asked that question?
Well, usually after the fact, which is problematic. So when you have windows and doors that are obligation of the association, that's a question, and you have a milestone or any other type of inspection, or even you're performing the concrete restoration work, and the windows and doors have to be removed to work on the common elements, which of course are the association's obligation. So now you have 2 parties involved to do the work which is required to be done. What typically occurs is, again, you get ahead of the problem. Your windows and doors may need to be removed. If your windows and doors are not permitted to be put back in, depending on what jurisdiction you're in, your windows and doors may not be able to be put back in. We typically will provide that if you do not remove your windows and doors by a certain time frame, there's a lot of different ways to solve this problem, and it's a problem. So let's start out with the fact, acknowledging it's a problem. There's a lot of different practical ways to go about it. We have to preserve the common elements. We have to do the concrete restoration. The milestone study has determined that there are issues with that particular area. We can do and go about it 1 of 2 ways. We can go about it to say, if you want to opt in, and this is not really a legal per se answer, but if you want to opt in to removing your own windows and doors and putting them back, then you will be removing them by a date certain based upon a calendar. And of course, now we're talking about contractor scheduling, delays, windows of when it's going to be done, what stack is going to be done first, what stack is going to be done second. all of those different pieces come into this to make it a really complicated issue. But in my experience, what typically is the case, if it's a window and door that's an owner obligation, the association removes the windows and doors. There is an acknowledgement and understanding that, and you do this at the outset, you do not wait for this to happen after the fact. If you do not remove your windows and doors voluntarily, they will be removed. We have to go in and remove the windows and doors. From a legal aspect, if somebody refuses and continues to refuse and doesn't kind of consent, then we have to go through a legal process to get that to happen. That's been very few and far between in my experience. My experience has been the windows and doors are removed. The communication has not been as strict and direct as it needed to be. If your window and door cannot be put back in, it will not be put back in. And that's your obligation to then replace your window or door. That comes a couple different ways. If the local jurisdiction does not allow that contractor, and the engineer will not sign off on that window or door being put back in because it's not permitted, you have a problem. And again, it should have been addressed. If your window and door is determined to be out of code, you don't have the original permits, it's not stamped in the bottom because it's so old. It basically, the framing is even falling apart as we take it out, then we can't put it back in and you will be required to replace your window and door. The other is when they take the window and door out, and although they received a permit for it 10 years ago, it was really not put in the correct way. And you've got like 2x4 and 2x4 and 2x4 stacked up to create this frame that's actually not pursuant to code. And the owners, unfortunately, don't understand that that's actually a matter of fact. That's how it's put in. From an association's point of view, in my opinion, you work through that fluidly with your contractor. If the window and door can be reinstalled, you do your best to reinstall it. From my point of view, the best approach is to have the owner reinstall their windows and doors and to take them out. But as we all know, that does typically not work because they don't even know the concrete restoration is going on until someone's hammering on their balcony. So for a long-winded answer, that is something that you're going to work with legal counsel, you're going to work with your contractor, and the main takeaway point is you get ahead of it. If it's a window and doors that's owner obligation, you know you're going to have issues with that work. You know you're going to have to logistically make sure that A, the owner is aware of their obligation to replace those windows and doors if they can't be put back. And B, if they can be put back, if it's going to be the association that's doing that, sometimes it's a matter of the owner working directly with a contractor. Sometimes it's a bulk contract overall. You'll want to work out with your legal counsel different releases or different understandings with respect to how that's going to actually happen. And by the way, Ben, that also, as you know, happens with glass enclosures on balconies and screen enclosures. So when you're going into that, sometimes it may be discovered from a milestone. It is a true problem. Definitely work with legal counsel and your contractor. This isn't the first time they've been down this road, to make sure communication is key so that none of the owners are surprised that they have to pay individually to have their window reinstalled, or ultimately your window can't be reinstalled. It's 35 years old. My recommendation, and we'll move on, when you have those big projects taking place, if you do not have impact window requirement for your entire building, now is the time to require it. You will have pitchforks thrown at you at the meeting as a board, but you are solving a problem that's not going to go away in the next decade for those old windows and doors. That's usually the way I approach it. I encourage my clients to go ahead and, now that we have the problem, or alternatively, depending on the circumstances, perhaps shifting that window and door obligation to the association and not the owners. And by the way, you wouldn't be surprised, we have mid-rises, 11-story, 12-story. And Ben, you probably realize this too. The windows and doors are the obligation of the owner, even though it's 11 stories tall. So that's a real problem. It's a really good question. And the point to deal with it is when you're going in to do that work. Don't let it continue to fester over the next decade by having those windows and doors that are old be replaced back in. But it's definitely a dance that you have to work through from a logistical, not necessarily a legal perspective, because at the end of the day, the statute provides either owners responsible for windows or doors or the association is.
Thanks for clarifying.
Back to SERS, again, waiving that. after 2026 budget. In the 2026 budget, you'll have full funding. We talked about this as well. We won't get into the developer. The developer is required to have a turnover report. Again, a cost association is responsible for the cost of that inspection report.
There was one question which I tried to answer, but I don't think I was clear enough. So whose responsibility is it to meet the jurisdiction standard when the engineering firm has completed the milestone?
If you have completed the milestone and you have the engineer has turned that into the jurisdiction, and there have been no citations that it's wrong, it's kind of a tough question. I don't know whether or not there's an additional obligation, because a lot of the times those additional requirements legally were either overwritten by the statutory changes from the time that those were put in place, depending on when that code for that local jurisdiction was put in place. Remember, I said that a lot of them were put in place before the statute was even written in 2022, right after Surfside. Others were put in place later on. So you'd really probably honestly consult legal counsel on that. As a board member, just consult legal counsel.
But
you don't want to go to law.
About the performance of your engineer, you talk to legal counsel.
Well, if it's a concern about the performance of an engineer, that's a separate question. But if it's whether or not you have failed or the engineer hasn't met the requirements, that's really a question you should refer to legal counsel. As a board member, a volunteer board member, don't put yourself in that position.
Right.
We talked about, dispute was expanded regarding what constitutes a dispute to include SIRS and milestone. We're going to kind of move through these. I think we've really touched upon all of this. I really like this little slide though, Katie. The yellow guys, the yellow hats. That's a new one I haven't seen yet.
It's almost done, Paula. This is
I know. I'm telling you, I like it. My favorite one's usually this, so everyone appreciates. That's my bad joke one. The red guy yelling at the blue guys. I'm trying to lighten it up here. I'm sure everyone's putting to sleep here.
Yeah, we gotta go blow through the rest of this because we got to get to the new stuff.
Well, this is developer turnover report. You guys will have these slides.
Again, I know I've said it in the chat a million times. We will be sending you a copy of the presentation, so you will have that to review anything that we do go through quickly.
And if I'm spinning through it like this, it means it's relating to a developer or it's not necessarily a takeaway point I think you're going to hold on to, okay? Purchase and sale agreements, we're moving through this quickly too. If you have a purchase and sale agreement, this is individual to you as an owner. You're going to work with your realtor. Specifically, you're going to disclose when you're in a situation where you're a condominium seller, disclose everything to your prospective purchaser. There are statutory requirements now that you're disclosing those types of things, including the milestone. Expanding when we can display flags. Radio strength signal. This is something from a practical point, Katie, I just want to point out. This is effective July 1st of 2023. So this was last year's slide. You need to make sure, and I think most of what I've seen for our clients is it's your local fire jurisdiction rather, that's making sure that you have coverage. I've had a few clients have to upgrade some of their internal signal strength components to reach this. So that means, in our bigger condos and certain types of condos, you're going to have to make sure that the coverage expands so that our fire safety can hear each other in your larger condos, high rise, mid rise, etc. Building permits. This is identification minimum previous policy. This really just goes with building permits. We're going to get into timeline reductions with respect to hurricane. Keep that in mind. The building permits is you can't change the permit issuer and certain compensations. That's just really goes to contractors. Some of these, by the way, guys, some of these courses that we present, we are required to put in certain new legislation. I just want to point that out. It's not like we want to skip it over because we put it in, but we are required to put certain things in. So if you deal with building permits on a continuing basis, there's your slide. Reinsurance, this is the attempt to reduce insurance rates in Florida by the reinsurance with respect to our admitted carriers. Insurance companies have 60 days instead of 90 days to pay or deny claims. Different specific reductions in timeframes. In 7 days, insurance companies and policyholder adjust. This just goes to whether you put a claim in, there's some different requirements with respect to that. Certain things that you'll probably never deal with so long as your claim is approved. Keep in mind, assignment of benefits. I just want to point this out to my condo clients and my HOA clients. Before you assign your claim, please consult your legal counsel or Katie, and she'll tell you everything she thinks about that. Bad faith. This is intended to reduce insurance costs with respect to bad faith. It's expanded to limit bad faith claims against insurers. It's making it harder for people to claim bad faith. Flood insurance, this relates to citizen policyholders. You may be required to obtain a flood insurance policy before Citizens makes your policy effective. COVID test. We're moving through that. We've already moved through COVID, right? Just don't sneeze.
That's done.
That's done. Katie says COVID is over with. Statute of limitations. This does affect our turnover clients. No attorneys are a really huge fan of this unless you're the defense attorney on certain statutes that relate to construction defects. They basically limited the statute of limitations and statute of repose for construction defects. Not a great thing. Golf carts. This was October 1st, 2023. The statute was amended to provide use of golf carts on public roads or streets, including your gate enclosed streets. My takeaway point is before you go adopting a bunch of golf cart rules for which you've now created a duty to enforce, consult your legal counsel. I don't recommend adopting golf cart rules when your statute already provides for it, but there's some ins and outs of that. Again, consult your legal counsel when you adopt rules that may create additional duties that you otherwise don't have. This is part of our elevator course. My favorite course is the elevator course. But takeaway point is if you have an elevator and you have any type of accident, incident, you will report it to the division. And that is within 5 working days. And you say, what is an accident or an incident? And that can be that Paula gets stuck in the elevator for 1 minute. And I have a panic
Paula's
attack.
Doing a panel event on elevators next week. So you'll get that in the email.
And if you want to hear my funny jokes about being stuck in an elevator, you'll have to attend the course because Katie is telling me to hurry up. So I would love to be stuck in an elevator for about 6 hours and I would take a nap. But some people have panic attacks. And so that's considered an incident. So you want to report it.
Anybody needs that form, you can get it at the division here, or I have one
Right.
and I can email it to you. Just email me back.
If you have an elevator and you
Let
need
me
the
know.
form, it's online as well.
It is online.
You
but
go
yeah,
online, you
find
fill
it
out the
through
form
computer.
that Katie was stuck in the elevator and she had a panic attack and she couldn't get to her floor. Overhauls litigation landscape. The law was expected again to reduce frivolous claims and associations, also likely to lower insurance rates. I actually liked this particular bill. Community associations are exempt from third-party liability for crime on their property. Here's the takeaway for this. It's effective March 24th, 2023. This really was intended to relate to multifamily, meaning multifamily rental apartments, and to reduce the liability for those particular entities and essentially our insurance carriers in Florida, where you can undertake certain proactive measures to then move the burden of proof back to the plaintiff in a sense on certain things. That's the best way I can explain it kind of in common sense approach. So certain things you can do. It did not exempt condominiums. So more on this later, because again, this is one of those other areas where through the crime prevention environmental CDP study, we're going to be working with an administrative division of Florida to find out what does that mean to us, because you're going to have training and then you're going to have inspections to confirm that you've complied with these requirements. So more on that later. This is still kind of in the works. It was passed last year. Again, intended for multifamily, but it does affect our condos. So anything we can do potentially to reduce our insurance premiums overall, collectively for everyone in Florida, this is something that was geared towards that. This is, again, Florida Building Code. They cannot move the goalpost. Once you've submitted for a permit, they cannot continue to add code requirements to your permit once it's been submitted, essentially. Plans, examiners, Safety in Private Spaces Act. Again, this is the DeSantis bill providing for restrooms to be used exclusive by males or females. Update on 2023. We have to put this in here for you guys to know that if you are, it could come up from time to time for a country club or a condo. You can limit your bathrooms to a respective female or male. Going through, again, drone delivery. We can at least be assured that local jurisdictions have less control over drone delivery, and we're not there yet. I don't have
Don't
my
mess with my Amazon.
mine's embarrassingly the Temu. It's gonna be delivered by drone. But that basically the drone delivery. One thing I'll take for our HOA condo listeners for drones, especially for our HOAs. Most of the time when I do HOA amendments to our declarations, I do include now the use of recreational drones in the community. So that's something that has become important for a lot of our HOAs. We've had several problems with the use of recreational drones from individuals scoping down in someone's pool, going back and forth. Usually it's a younger person that's doing this. So we do actually, I do have an amendment provision for our HOAs with respect to drones. So it's kind of the takeaway point there. But you want to move on, Katie, to...
Yeah, so there's a number of questions, but in respect of everyone's time, let's go through this and then Ben can hit all of the open questions once we finish the presentation for those who can't stay.
Right. And I'm going to try to move through this quite quickly.
And just so you know, guys, this does not satisfy the legal requirement for the new licensing period, which starts October 1st. We will be teaching this formally in October for credit.
So
just so you have a quick.
So to reiterate Katie's point from the beginning, this was a 2023-2024 update. We are going to skim over the 2024 update, the recent new legislation from this last session. House Bill 59. For HOAs, we have to distribute the rules and covenants by October 1st, 2024. So we will be making sure that we have compiled all of our HOA declaration, declaration, bylaws, articles, and our rules and regulations. We're distributing that to everyone in our association because we want them to have all of the updated materials. This was an amendment to the statute. We are required to do that by October 1st. So we're almost at August 1st. So get ready for that. Prepare how to distribute that. Again, it's going to be mailed or it's going to be electronically mailed if you have consent.
Or if you're an HOA with more than 100 units, you'll find it soon enough that you have to do a website. You could do that now, rather than later, and then give them a link to the website.
You can save money now by creating the website that's required for an HOA of 100 or more. And because you have that website already created and you are so proactive, you can then post your governing documents on your website as opposed to paying for the mail. This was a big change with respect to community association managers. Very important. You have to return all official records within 20 business days of the termination, disclose all conflicts. If you have competitive bids with an interested service provider, there's disclosure. Again, with CAMs, there's more disclosure requirements. There is the statutory requirements with respect to the return of the records. And 20% of the members may cancel contracts if they're not disclosed with that relationship to your community association management company. Clarifies, expands the jurisdiction of the division, adds power to investigate conflicts of interest. respond to written inquiries to remove officers for accepting quote unquote kickbacks, use of debit cards. If you still have a debit card, it's nature way you want to make sure you do not have that debit card anymore. You cancel that. Refers division employees with respect to theft or embezzlement. Requires a division to create a database that have completed their structural integrity reserve study. So that's January 1st, 2025. That will be coming forward with respect to reporting to the division eventually. It's not going to happen this year. It's going to happen next year. Gives the division the power to attend association meetings. I can't wait for that. That will be a fun time. I was just at one yesterday until 9 something. Not quite sure how effective that's going to be or what that's going to do for us, but that is pursuant to the new changes in the statute. Gives the division the power to request access to the association's website. Changes to, again, to the applicable official records. This does change the manner in which we present the official records for an inspection request. We all need to really tighten up the official records inspections responses and the ability to open those official records within the time frame required. You must furnish a checklist of records that were made available. Must identify any records not made available during the inspection. So essentially this new legislation created, I think, in my opinion, a larger burden for our associations to meet the official records inspections requirements, as opposed just to opening those official records up for inspection. So one of the main things is going to be creating that checklist of records that we've made available. So in a sense, it's almost an inventory that we're required to do in addition to the inspection. Websites are required for condos with 25 units or more. I'll say that again, websites are required for condos with 25 units or more. Contracts to be approved must be attached to the agenda for the meeting or otherwise made available to the members prior to the meeting. I'm not in love with that statutory change because oftentimes we have 1 or 2 contracts the board is considering, but that is the requirement. We will be attaching, if you're going to consider and adopt a contract, it must be attached to the notice or agenda or otherwise made available on the association's website. Association cannot waive financial reporting requirements for consecutive years. This is actually just reverting back to what the statute required like 4 years ago. You cannot do it for consecutive years. So it's going to be the waiver of reducing your financial reporting requirement. You can't do it year after year. Simple as said. You must hold board meetings at least quarterly and allow members to ask questions about the status of construction projects and the revenues and expenses for the current fiscal year. We'll wait to kind of see how the interpretation of that statute works out because they did not amend the speaking on the agenda items. So we'll see how that works. Takeaway point for me to my association clients is if you can perfect or nearly perfect or not even, the organized meetings for the board will produce a dramatic difference with respect to your overall administration of your association. So don't underestimate the power of that organized meeting. So having an organized meeting, having a strong chairperson, direct the meetings, having the owners understand not to speak over each other. It is a forum where there has to be some decorum that's met. So with respect to the addition of these types of agenda items, in a sense, being spoke on every time, it will be a challenge to make sure that you can keep your meeting in order. I can't say that enough. Owners who opt into electronic voting must be permitted to vote electronically in subsequent voting events. I believe that was just kind of a clarification of the prior statutory authority to allow electronic voting. You must notify owners 90 days prior to the election of a delinquency status and the suspension of voting rights. Anytime that we were going to suspend voting rights, if you consulted your legal counsel, they would have told you that that needs to be done at a proper notice board meeting to suspend voting rights. Now it needs to be done 90 days in advance. Additional continuing education, if you will, for directors and the requirement to attend education classes. The initial session is 4 hours class and yearly 1 hour updates required. certificate valid for 7 years of continuous service, and you must certify annually that all directors complied with the education requirements.
So just to give you guys an idea, we are working to revamp all of our entire board member education, but the DVPR still has the submission criteria from 2018. So they have not updated it. I've done 2 inquiries to the DVPR. So all I can tell you is that it's coming soon.
Right.
To a theater near you.
Right.
So we will get those classes. I'm hoping to be able to present by September, the board certification classes, and then we'll start the continuing education, but we're going to start with the initial board certification classes, just waiting for the submission criteria.
Okay, so what Katie's explaining is the division, again, is the division of Florida State Department of Land Sales. It is responsible to create the course outline, and then we create the course itself. But they're, again, on our condo and HOA attorney blogs, they don't have the course outline yet, so we have not created the courses. So we will keep you posted as to when these education sessions will begin to be compliant with statute. And you say September?
I'm hoping.
I'm going to take bets into the chat box. I'm thinking, I'm going to say early December.
I already have my outline ready.
I know you do. I know you're ready.
For them to put the criteria.
I'm going to put Katie, I'm going to put you in charge of the division.
Yeah. It'd be a lot smoother for a lot of things.
I'm thinking it would have a big shakeup. But we'll get you guys that information. The bottom line is this: board members, 4 hours class, initial session, 1 hour updates. It is worth it. Hopefully you attend one that doesn't put you to sleep for 4 hours, but at least you get some knowledge. It doesn't hurt. Attend in person at least 1 meeting per year. That is for your community association manager. Most of my managers I know, they're usually contract with each CAM, assigned to the account, keep them posted on the CAM and the hours of availability, summary of the duties of the CAM, a copy of the contract with the HOA. CAMs are 5 hours of education specific to HOAs every year. Every 7 years, is that what's supposed to say, Katie?
I believe so. Yeah, this is a summary that we worked with CAI to do. So,
but yeah. I think what the takeaway point is, the community association managers' education requirements reduced, correct? And the board members increased. So we all know that. Changes applicable to HOAs, post official records on a website, communities with 100 or more parcels. January 1st, 2025, you will be required to have a website if you're 100 more parcels. But again, if you already have a website, then you can provide that update for the governing documents on that website as well. Furnished documents provide access to law enforcement within 5 days of receipt of a subpoena. Assist law enforcement as appropriate. This is interesting. These are interesting changes to me because in my experience, I've not had a lot of issues where my HOAs were reluctant to assist. Obtain an annual audit, 1,000 or more, regardless of income. You will have an audit requirement, which I think is backwards because typically my communities of 1,000 or more are large master associations with several to tens of sub-associations that actually have a larger budget than the master overall in a sense. So,
and just to clarify, debit cards are also illegal for condos. They have been for several years.
Right.
So condo co-op and HOA now should have no debit cards.
Yes.
You can have a credit card. I have several banks. If you need that information, I have several banks that will issue those to condos and HOAs for, without a personal guarantee.
Right. Right. So that's a good question. So,
yeah.
So, when I mentioned HOA, no debit cards, that's been the case for co-op and condo already. Katie mentioned a very good point. I have a lot of my HOA board members saying, well, now I have to give them my own social security number as a board member. There are banks that will issue an association credit card without that board member obligation with a security number, correct? They'll issue it under the EIN. Okay. HOA directors and officers, we're going to complete that mandatory education. We just touched upon that. We're going to leave office if we're charged with a criminal offense concerning HOA. And by the way, for those of you all that don't know, this is again the catch-all basket net thrown way too wide based upon the Miami issue with the HOA that where the funds were embezzled.
Yeah, and since you're speaking about the CAM education too, so I don't know why the division did this, but they said all the CAM managers with more than 10 years of experience are exempt from continuing education, which I think is a mistake and will probably be corrected yesterday.
Yesterday. Should have been corrected yesterday.
Should have been corrected yesterday. Will be corrected by next year. But because realtors were not in that exemption bucket and we have more laws than they do, but you know, hey, I don't make the rules at the division for the state.
So Katie's just mentioning that for any CAM with 10 years of experience or more, and they're now exempt from continuing education. But I agree with you, Katie. I think they will change that back, because no matter what, so long as the laws are changing, then your education needs to be maintained. That's the bottom line. So even if you're in that category, I would suggest continuing your education, continuing to log on, receive information, etc. We're going to, furnish individual ledgers accounting to HOA issues 15 days before business days of request. This is an important one, I think, that might sneak by you. It's refrain from regulating interior changes not visible from the exterior. What does that mean? Why are we touching upon that in the legislation? It's because oftentimes when we have contractors that are performing renovation work to the interior of a home, I do have associations that are requiring additional insurance that's not necessary just to drive to and from the parcel, and additional requirements with respect to vetting the contractor. All of those types of architectural changes, I wouldn't even call them architectural changes, interior renovation changes, you are prohibited as an HOA from controlling that, which I think is probably one of the only statutes that I favor out of this whole legislative change. So keep that in mind. Again, eliminating ARC review of interior HVAC systems not visible from the exterior. And the ARC pinpointing a rule or covenant as grounds for the denial or a request. That's really always been the case. If you're going to have an ARC rule regulation, it needs to be in writing. It needs to be published to the community as any other rule. That's pursuant to 720-3085. We already have those in place. The ARC is a very important committee. You want to make sure you're doing it right. Homeowners Association, truck parking was one of our hot button issues when this was passed. I referenced earlier, about an hour and a half ago, with respect to whether or not substantive legislative changes affect your homeowners association or condominium association. And that is because the Constitution of Florida protects your contractual rights to not have legislation passed that affects a substantive contractual right. Your declaration, condominium, your declaration for your HOA is a contract between owners and with your association. If you do not have Kaufman language, then substantive changes to the Condo Act or the HOA Act may not apply to your association. You need to obtain legal advice with respect to whether or not your prohibition that is in your declaration, that is enforced, has always been enforced, does the new change with respect to truck parking apply to your HOA? It may not. If you do not have Kaufman language indicating that the legislation of 720 changes your substantive vested rights, then the truck legislation may not apply to your HOA.
And
so
let's just
you
clarify,
want
that's
to,
HOA only.
this
correct?
is HOA only. So the truck parking restriction in your HOA declaration may still be valid. You want to consult legal counsel on that. Okay. And again, that's a constitutional, it's called impairment of contracts. So we have a contract, the legislation cannot impair a contract. There are exceptions to that general rule, and that is if it's because it's based upon public policy as a whole, or it is retroactively intended to clarify or fix prior legal statute. So again, consult your legal counsel before you just accept the fact that the truck legislation was passed. And your legal counsel will look for Kaufman language in your declaration. HOA fines, this is my least favorite area. However, at the end of the day, I really don't have a lot of communities that fine. I do have some that fine, they fine very effectively, but most don't have the committee, or they haven't set it up, or they don't fine correctly with respect to pictures, documentations. The takeaway point here is you still have all the statutory requirements with respect to fining procedure, and a hearing must be held within 90 days. However, if the violation is remedied prior to the committee hearing, then the fine cannot be levied. So the board will levy the fine, and then you send that particular person the notice and the notice of the committee hearing. If they cure the fine prior to that, then you can't levy the fine or impose it by the committee, okay? So they kind of took a lot of teeth out of it. But if the goal is to make sure that people cure their violations, then hopefully they've effectively done that. Hurricane protection. HOAs must adopt hurricane protection specifications. That has always been the case for condos, not always, but for at least a couple decades. If you're going to control hurricane shutters on the exterior of a home as part of your ARC, then you must adopt specific specifications. You cannot reject an ACC that requests to install shutters that conform to the specifications. This also includes roofs, fixed storm shutters, windows, garage doors, erosion controls, fuel storage tanks. More to be said on the fuel storage tanks because we're going to have easements, and we're also going to have the city requirements, municipality requirements for any type of gas storage tanks for generators.
And before you move on, Paula, we did not actually have the slide in there on the My Safe Florida condominium program, but there again, that's a state issue. I've joined the mailing list on the state website, which has no more other information other than coming soon. So as soon as we get any more information on submission deadlines or any more information on that, we will let you know. But as of right now, it's not on there.
So Katie's talking about the My Florida Safe condominium program, which is a grant funding program for condominiums. It's a 2-for-$1 match. Here's what I want to tell you unless it changes. For any of those grant funding under that program, if you have to have, obviously the board will propose and enter into the program to apply. But to obtain the funds, first of all, you have to have a project. You can't just say, I need some money. You have to have a project planned. You can't already have it underway. The bottom line is this: that particular legislation comes with the requirement that all owners in that building have to consent. I'll say it again. Every single owner in the building that will receive the improvement based upon the grant has to consent to it. So you have unanimous owner approval for that, which has made it really, really hard ultimately to probably obtain the funding. Once the application is submitted and the state says, okay, we're going to come out and review this, you have to have unanimous consent for that particular building. So if you're a multi-condo building and you want to improve one or the two buildings or whatever the program is, whatever your plans are, you're going to have to obtain 100% approval of your building for every owner. So unless they change that, we are looking at that as a major, yes, as a major issue.
Well, then nobody's gonna get the money.
Well, I know, unless you're like one of those U-shaped, 1969, 70
20 units and you can
with
get
16 units.
Yeah.
I do have a condo unit like that though, so I'm quite happy about it. But it's a little frustrating overall because so many of my clients were so excited about this and they're really kind of moving forward. And I had managers that were moving forward to put this in place. But unless it changes, you have to have 100% unit owner approval for the building that will receive the improvement to get the grant money. So that's a little frustrating, but that's how it works. But Katie will keep you informed on all of that as well.
Yes, we're super way over time. Thank you all. That is the end of the Axel presentation. I know we have a couple lingering questions. So for those of you waiting on answers, you can stick around. Ben, do you want to cover those ones that are still outstanding on the Q&A?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks.
All right, so I'll start at the top. So in no specific order, there's a question. Is the roster info required to be on the building's website?
So once for the condominium association at this point in time, the roster is not required. For an HOA, I don't know what they're going to require with respect to that, but there is the catch-all that it's any official record. So it would be located, if you want to put it up there, it'd be located in obviously the closed area that's only accessible to any unit owner. That goes without saying. It's at this point in time an official record. It's not required to be posted, the roster.
Okay. Should the condo have a written policy related to prohibiting of related party transactions?
Should the association have, no, so the association is not required to have a policy with respect to related party transactions. In other words, contracts that a board member may have a pecuniary interest in, a monetary interest in that company, that is a conflict of interest pursuant to the Not-for-Profit Act. Yeah. And there, for the Condominium Act, it's prohibited. For HOAs, you're going to move through 617 to waive that conflict out. However, most of the time, I'm going to discourage any type of conflict like that or contract like that. If it is something that the board wants to do, again, I do suggest you consult legal counsel to make sure that you navigate through 617 with respect to the waiver requirements. It's a good question, though. What I highly recommend, because I see this often, is paying attention to your bid process. I don't suspect you'd make it like a government bid process, but when you have one board member who is tasked with going out and getting bids for a particular project, we want to make sure that we understand the parameters of how those bids come in. A lot of times we don't have, for certain projects, an engineer involved where they have the scope of work and they're kind of processing the bids on behalf of the board. So for you have a new gate vendor that you want to work with. So you're going to go out and get bids for the new gate vendor. Have a policy that's specific to bidding. And understanding that some of those bids have to, at a certain point in time, be posted on the website. But that's where I see issues come up, is where we have a bidding process that's a little bit too loose and free. And it's completely opposite of what question you asked, but that's where I see issues come up with respect to entering into contracts and understanding that that bid process was solid and transparent. For conflicts of interest, it's not necessary because Florida statute governs that particular piece of it.
Okay, then this individual that asked that question had the same had another piece of it, which was, my inquiry was not related to the accounting entry, but rather from a legal point of view. If the condo decides to have a policy signed by the new owner or renter, years later, the person or family move on from the condo after making every effort to contact them, it was not possible to get a forwarding address. If the condo has a policy that the person signs acknowledging that they have 90 days or whatever the period is from the date they moved out to request funds, if the funds were not forfeited, blah, 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 would having a policy like this violate any of the Florida statutes that you know of or any other regulations from the state of Florida?
So I would just say generally, again, now that Florida statutes change for HOAs, that's a big no-no. But ultimately, looking backwards, there are going to be statutes that will be not in 720 or 718. They're going to be arguably in other types of areas hidden, even with respect to unclaimed funds. There's a statute with respect to unclaimed funds. I would not feel comfortable giving my client, any of my clients, advice that this 90-day lose it, claim it or lose it provision under a separate contract would be enforceable under Florida law. I looked at this issue about 7 months ago for a client, and my advice was stay the line on and return those funds when you cannot locate you cannot locate the particular person, especially when, and I'm going to highlight this, if you know that person's name and you know who those funds belong to, then you certainly return them, follow the statute, consult legal advice, and return it to the state if you cannot locate them. In certain instances, I have, we can give an example that says it was, those funds have been sitting there for 20-something years. And it was like, oh, what's this? Okay. That's a different story, but you want to consult legal counsel. You do not want to take it upon yourself as a volunteer board member or a manager to take the position that there is not a statute or requirement, because even the unclaimed funds will address that, especially if you know that person's name. That's
Okay.
serious. And the way that comes out, real quick, the way that comes into play is when I have a client that's a new board member and says, whoa, I just discovered this and I don't want anything to do with it. I don't want to be in that seat when something comes back on this particular amount of money that's just sitting here. I don't want to be that person. And that's where it comes into play for me to say, okay, as a board member, you shouldn't be strapped with what happened 10 years ago. It's a serious issue. You do need to get legal advice and you need to handle it according to what your attorney says. And that's, again, the business judgment rule. You're going to follow your legal advice as a board member and as a community association manager. Don't put yourself in a position of recognizing you have $25,000 in funds and you're going to, do something creative with it, like a capital improvement. Don't be that guy.
Okay, thank you. We got a handful more. Do condominiums have a deadline to return deposit checks?
So the statute was changed. I don't know what you just did, but you slowed the entire thing down. And it's like being weird. So undo what you did.
I just unplugged it.
Well, now it's just strange. It's like not even.
Go ahead. You look fine.
No, I don't. Okay, so the act was amended for 720, not for 718. But I would suggest following 7-8. I would suggest if you're a condominium, then you track the new changes to the HOA Act.
Okay. Let me see if I'm reading this correctly, but it seems like this individual is asking if the roster has your email in it. It is assumed that owners are allowing to be contacted in email blasts for condo, business, elections, etc. And the rosters can be provided if an owner asks for this document.
In other words,
Question.
Addresses.
Mm-hmm. Right. So my suggestion that I made earlier really stands. If you promulgate a rule or regulation, although you're entitled to the official records, just like if you're entitled to receive the official record of the contract you signed with the roofer, that doesn't entitle an owner to distribute that contract to the neighboring building or to someone outside of the membership. So I think it's reasonable with respect to a reasonable rule and regulation to indicate that if you obtain the email addresses through an official records inspection request, that consent that the owner gave the association does not transfer to an owner to consent to email me. And that's the way I would promulgate the rule. And I think it's an important rule to promulgate because typically what we see most of the time is when owners obtain these emails and they send unsolicited, group emails, sometimes they fail to even create the email to where it's hidden from the recipients. But I think it's a reasonable rule and regulation, and I think it's enforceable. And that's something that I would encourage the adoption of. We have an official records inspection policy that we have for our clients and includes something to that degree to where just because you have the official records does not mean that that official record is yours and you can use it any way you see fit, including spreading bids around to other memberships outside of your community. That's an important piece. And then again, I think it's reasonable to say if you obtain an email address where the owner has consented to the association using it, it does not give you the right to use that email address. Now, take that away from the fact that if I have an address listed and the address is public record, well, then it goes to follow. Sure, you can use that because that is public record. But that email address was provided specifically to the association with the consent.
Sure. Very good. Here's one. Does a board of directors have liability if they neglect to provide information and or documentation to a prospective purchaser if that information or documentation is not statutory required?
So the statutory requirements for information is pursuant to the estoppel requirements. I think there's 15 questions. That is the statutory obligation of the association. Also, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and other lenders have mortgagee questionnaires. This is more prevalent in condominiums. The association is not obligated to provide a response to that questionnaire. Obviously, if you don't, there's going to be problems with the closing. That questionnaire can actually, the HOA, the CAM can ask for assistance from their legal counsel, and the requester has to pay for those fees related to that work. That is what I always suggest when you see those types of questionnaires. Any other documentation that's requested from a potential purchaser, the buyer can provide information to that potential purchaser. The other statutory requirement from last year or the year before is the milestone, and those inspection reports are part of that particular required transaction. Outside of that, the association is not obligated to provide additional information outside of the estoppel. The questionnaire is voluntary. However, if you don't fill it out, they're not closing. So absent that, that is the only thing that's required to be provided from the association directly to a purchaser.
Okay. Regarding the BDA requirement, has anyone spoken about the frequency being, quote, bad for someone's health?
The radio frequency?
They put in their BDA.
That's the radio frequency for the fire. I haven't seen that yet. I've seen issues with antennas on buildings and things, but you know, that would be for the 5G and the 4G and the cell phone towers antenna, but I have not seen anything regarding radio frequency. No.
Okay. So this was a question, I'm not sure which piece it was referring to, but someone asked, does that mean 2 meetings minimum would be required for the rest of the year? I'm not sure what they were referring to.
So I think what they're referring to, it's a good question. So July 1st, 2023, it was passed. So we have 2 quarters essentially left. So that would be, in my opinion, if you haven't had a meeting this quarter since July 1st, you'd have 1 meeting and then a second meeting.
Okay.
So, but overall, of course, it's you don't have to stay stale to quarter to quarter to quarter. It would be fluid with respect to at least 4 every quarter, which would be measured from your last meeting.
Okay. Our condominium association has a policy manual that is not being followed. Is there any teeth to a policy manual?
I'm not sure I understand the question about policy manual, if they're talking about rules and regulations.
Maybe conduct, yeah, something like that.
I guess it's kind of a specific question. I don't know what policy manual.
Even with the rules
and
regulations.
You know,
right. If someone's not following the rules, sure, you have.
Right.
You know.
But I don't know what a policy manual means. If they're talking about people's conduct, I'm not a huge fan of those, but you know, rules and regulations have to be followed if they've been properly adopted. But they're typically dealing with the unit owners and not board members.
Okay. The list of records not made available for inspection, this is referring to. Is it only from those requested, or is it the entire inventory of official records?
It's a really good question, and we haven't even gotten into that yet. I think it would be, I'd have to look at the specific statutory language. And again, I have not addressed that in practice yet. But it would probably be a specific, I'm not going to answer that because I don't even know exactly how that language is written. I don't know if Katie can pull it up really quick, but it would be based upon my interpretation of how that statute's written. The goal would be to probably recite what the statute provides as official records, taking out those which are accepted from inspection, and then perhaps checkboxing off those that were provided and those that weren't. In practice, how it typically occurs is I ask for records A, B, C, and D of some type, of certain type, and I come in and inspect those particular records. From time to time, I will open up the entire official records based upon the request. So for me, the takeaway point here is this, and I've been saying it over and over again the last few weeks. Official records inspections requests were not intended to be weaponized against our board members or our associations, but from time to time they are. So I like to, first and foremost, you adopt an official records inspection policy with respect to how the official records inspections are requested. You are consistent with respect to where they take place, how they take place. If it's at the attorney's office each and every time, it's at the attorney's office each and every time. For every person. And so there's some limited discretion. If I request something that I'm entitled to, like the governing documents or the financial report from last year, that can be PDF'd. Consistency is key. More and more cases are even coming out of the appellate case, the courts, which tells you that someone took the records inspection failure or allegations that the association failed all the way to an appellate case. So my bottom line for my association clients is consistency. Start with the policy. Official records inspections are performed here for my clients that within 45 miles. There's a laptop. Here's your official records. And unfortunately, that's what we've been brought to with respect to legislation.
Got it. All right. So I think this is the last one. You have to return the fee if the questionnaire has been completed, but the sale fell through.
The attorney's fees, and let's make sure everyone understands, the estoppel is different than the mortgagee questionnaire. The estoppel fee, if the closing does not close, the estoppel fee must be returned. I don't see it very often. That was in 2013 that changed. The Fannie Mae or the Freddie Mac or just the lender questionnaire, the fee does not need to be returned if the closing falls through.
Okay. Let's see. I think, Katie, you see what I see. These last two things I think are just comments.
After we're getting like, we're so way over time. I will address the one. So how about sending just like informational news or announcements being emailed to your owners, whether they've consented or not? That's fine, right?
Yes, typically, yes, I think that's fine. Whether they've consented or not, you're just sending newsletters or information about Katie's cookie decorating party in the lobby next week.
Well, or just here's what's happening at the association.
I'm being facetious, but yes, that's fine. So long as someone doesn't return an email and say, don't email me anymore, I think you're fine from an association point of view. From a housekeeping point of view for our managers, when we have transfers, sales, et cetera, that's really a good time to obtain those consents. And I can't emphasize enough how much money you save when you can, the consent through electronic notice. But as far as newsletters, even up-to-date information with respect to something that's going on at the condo, the water being shut off from the city, whatever it is, that's something that, yes, you can continue to do. If someone's told you to stop emailing me and they haven't given you consent, then you'll take them off your list.
All right. I'm going to just end as a moderator by saying thank you so much, Paula and Katie. I learn something new every time I do one of these, and I certainly learned a lot today. So thank you for more than the time that we all had here today. And Peggy, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Okay. Yeah, I echo that. Thank you so much. It's always information. You can't get enough, I don't think so. And Katie, thank you so much. And Ben for moderating. I just want to close by saying it's really hot out there. Stay hydrated and look for your sponsor sheet for all the people, especially the Vintium one, who's going to provide websites. All right. Thank you so much.
We're going to send out a copy of the presentation to everyone. And Peggy, you'll distribute the link for the recording?
Yep, I can. Yep.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thanks, Peggy. And thank you to all the sponsors and to all the listeners. And hopefully everyone takes away at least a couple good points. And we'll wait to see you again with the other updates.
Thank you,
Paula. When we get the criteria from the DVP.
When we get there. We'll get there. We'll all get there together.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks
Thank
so
you
much.
all.
Thank you.